Hello, it's Tanya and Amelia from Coffee Catchup's podcast, and you are listening to Coffee Catchup's Espresso on Cross Rhythms Radio. And today we are talking about how to know if you are too busy.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. Was that an oh dear there, Amelia?
That was an oh dear.
Is this because it's hashtag relatable?
It is very hashtag relatable, and I feel like I might be called out a lot on this episode.
Well, me too. Because I don't know about you, but I have said, I'm so busy so many times.
Yes, so many times.
Or the phrase, I just haven't stopped. I haven't stopped.
I know. I haven't sat down all day. I barely had time for myself.
Yeah. But when I think about busyness, I often think about relativity, like within busyness, because the clearest way I can kind of describe it is if I remember back to the heady days of my degree.
Oh, yes.
First year, I remember thinking, I'm so busy. So busy. I've got so much on. And then I got to third year and I thought, I had it so easy in first year because now I'm a whole new level of busyness.
So true.
And so there is something around busyness that we say I'm so busy a lot. We think, I'm so busy. And we can get into the headspace of, in my opinion, almost glorifying being busy.
Yes, so true. So true. It's kind of like, it's almost like busyness is sort of equated with success in a way, isn't it? Because, we have all this stuff like, if I take an example from my own life, I work, we do this show and the podcast, which is all great fun. And then I sort of I'm bad or good depending on how you look at it at setting myself projects. Like I have a blog and my aim is to translate that into Spanish, which sounds very clever and big, but it's I just for my own sort of proficiency with Spanish because I love it. But my aim is to translate that into Spanish by the end of the year, and I've set that as my own thing, and so I've been doing quite a lot with that. And then it's like, and alongside that, I've got to exercise, I've got to do chores, I've got to do this, got to do that, got to meet up with friends, and it just all feels like, that should be a successful life. Yeah. But it's actually just busy.
It is. And I think there's so much that we feel that we have to do, which can keep us busy. And life has the potential to be overwhelmingly full.
So true.
I love what you're saying. Just to kind of go back to where you feel like, I've got to do work, I've got to have a good social life, I've got to do my self-care, exercise, eat well, be experiencing new things, go and make the most of my days off, and then do all of my side projects. And Amelia, you set yourself a lot of side things to do. And I don't massively, but I've got a lot on with work. Like,
I was going to say, you also have like several jobs.
I am self-employed, so the level of time that being self-employed takes, and so you can end up, and I can end up not having days off for a very long time. Yeah. So business can be really exhausting. It can be really exhausting, and without meaning to, with our well-intentioned trying to keep everything together, we can collapse.
Yeah. Yeah, we can.
So, how do you know if you're too busy?
That is the question of the day, isn't it? I think, just kind of how tired are you? Are you constantly exhausting yourself? And I don't mean in like it's been a tiring week. I mean on a constant basis, how exhausted are you? And I think taking the time to assess that, and because it's all to do with individual capacity. Like, you, like you say, you do a lot of jobs all at once, and, those are necessary for life. But, I set myself side projects, and that's great because those are things I enjoy. But at the same time, I put a lot of pressure on those, and then I feel like I've failed sometimes if I don't reach the goals that I've set for myself within those side projects, even though they're actually not necessary. And, I'm like, I actually am really tired by this. And are you feeling like you failed?
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Where actually they're not entirely necessary.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and we're going to talk about it more, but we're going to go to a song. So we're talking about how do you know when you're too busy? And it's a really tricky one. And ultimately, it's an individual thing. It's how do you know?
It is, yeah.
And for me, I can, if I look at my capacity, I can take quite a lot of busyness. I like being busy. I think busy's great. I love filling my time with stuff. And I really enjoy being productive. And because I'm self-employed, I have to work for the work that I get. I know that sounds a bit bizarre saying it out loud, but I have to apply for the jobs and audition, and then I get the jobs, and I'm so grateful I've got them. And it makes you have a real appreciation for the work that you're doing. So I consider when my schedule is full of work to be extremely blessed.
Yes,
which I know is not everyone's approach to work. Some people go, oh, Monday, I hate Monday. But I love Monday. Sorry to trigger anyone. But I love being busy. And there's some really great stuff about being busy. They say the phrase, if you want something done, give it to someone who's busy.
Yes.
Because there's a productivity about it.
Yeah.
And so there's some really great things, but all of us need to start within our busyness and within the great things there are about being busy, recognize where our boundary is of when we go from being productively busy to your own detriment, busy to burnout. And burnout's a phrase we use quite a lot. What is your understanding of burnout?
Yeah, just kind of, I think getting to the point of exhaustion, really, and just being like, you feel like you're running on empty. I'm doing all of this stuff and I've not had any time to recover, and I just need a break because mentally I can't do this anymore. And I don't know about you, I've been in that place several times of burnout. And I remember when I was in my previous job, before I worked for the trust, there was a point where I was working 12-hour days for good reason. There was something had happened, and I was actually really needing to put a lot of extra effort in. And I was only supposed to work 9 to 5, but I ended up working about 9 till 9, I think, most days for a long time. And I just got to the end of that, and I also had been to a wedding which I had to travel for, and I had all of these sort of side projects still kind of ongoing, and like we were saying, chores, self-care, all of the necessary things. And I just remember I was actually in a church service, and I was sat at the back, and I just broke down. And one of our curates, Mike, huge shout out to Mike, absolute legend, came and just sat next to me, and he didn't say anything, and he just put his arm around me and he was like, "That's okay. You can cry it out." Because I was, legend, so grateful to him for that. But I just wept because I was so tired. I was like, I just can't do this anymore. And it's really hard, isn't it? Because you can't always see a way out of the burnout, because sometimes, luckily for me, I was able to book some annual leave directly after that once the situation sort of stabilised at work, and go away, which was awesome. But it was difficult getting there, and sometimes you just can't do that, can you? Sometimes you do have to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's important to recognize when it's starting, when the things are starting. And there's lots of different kinds of burnout. There is physical exhaustion there is emotional as well. And trying to keep tabs on the both of them as well. It has a lot to do with kind of boundaries, and we talk about in the podcast quite a lot, boundaries and people pleasing and things like that, of just learning to say no to a few things. And also I think a big one is learning what rest is for you, so that you can be as productive as you want to be.
Yes.
And there are a few things. There's learning to rest, and there's learning the difference between productivity and stress busyness.
Yes.
So and that's true. Often in the mindset, and is so it's such a discipline.
Big time.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how what we do if we think we're becoming overwhelmed, if we think we're too busy.
Yeah.
After this next song. Okay, so we're talking about busyness, and we're talking a little bit just before the song about when busyness starts to become too stressful and too overwhelming. How can we start to recognize that and then put what needs to be put in place to stop us getting to burnout, to overwhelm?
Yeah, such a good question. I think Making sure your boundaries are in place. I know we've talked about this before. We talk about it a lot on the podcast. Putting those boundaries in place and actually saying, this is where I rest. This is where I have time for myself, or this is where I socialise with my friends. And actually, if work is an issue, as I know it is for a lot of people, turn your phone off, turn your work phone off, because actually it sort of links back to people pleasing in a way. I think actually it's like if I don't take this phone call, then everything's going to fall apart. Or if I don't do this piece of work now, it's everything's gonna just go to pot. But actually assessing, is that actually the case? And in the next 12 hours while I put my phone off and go to sleep and have some downtime, does this need doing immediately? And usually the answer will be no.
Yeah.
Again, it's very dependent on individual situations. Sometimes I know if you're running a small business, actually sometimes you do need to work a lot more.
Yeah.
But sometimes and often there is a chance to actually put that down, and also kind of what we say yes and no to, I guess, as well. Yeah. When people say, hey, can you help me with this? Can you do that? Because again, they say, don't they, if you're a busy person, then you'll give a busy person
another
task.
Job. Yeah.
They're good at spinning plates. They can spin one more.
And I think that's a really interesting point that you make about spinning all the plates, because we all do in life. Adulting is essentially about balancing all of these things. And I heard someone talk about it as if we're all juggling, and we're all juggling these balls as jugglers do, and some of them are like tennis balls. They'll bounce. If you drop them, they'll be fine. You can pick them up again. And then some of them are made of glass, so if you drop them, they shatter.
Sure.
And that might be something like a really important relationship. It might be your mental health. It might be, there's lots of things. Whatever it is for you, what is the thing? If you drop this, if you stop looking after this and taking care of this, it would break. And it would be so much harder to pick it up. And then what are your things in your life that you can put down and pick back up again very easily when you're ready to juggle all those things again? Because when someone throws us another ball and another ball and another ball, and we keep trying to juggle all the things, the danger with juggling all of them and getting more things is that we drop all of them. And we drop the ones that are glass as well as the ones that bounce.
Yeah.
And so the problem with sort of with glorifying busyness to the point where, look at how much I'm juggling, is that actually you're going to drop everything and you're going to drop the things that matter. So when we're getting to the point where we go, I'm getting very tired, I'm getting emotionally tired, I'm getting physically tired, whatever's going on, what can I put down that I know I can pick back up?
Yeah.
And making that conscious decision, even if you've got to write it down, can be really helpful and limits any damage as well.
Yes, so true. I think that's a really, really helpful analogy. Actually, it's assessing what are the things that I absolutely cannot drop.
Yeah.
And what are the things that actually I can put this down for a little while. Kind of like I was saying with side projects, that actually, if I don't finish this blog translation thing that I'm trying to do and have been trying to do for a long time now, like, it's actually okay. I don't need to feel like I've failed in that, because actually it's not going to affect anything if I don't. Like, sure, okay, it might take me longer to actually finish the task, but it's not the end of the world. Or, like with our podcast, sometimes we just need to take a break, don't we?
Yeah.
And actually, we love doing our podcast. It's so much fun, and we love doing Coffee Catchup Espresso as well. But actually, there have been times, particularly during series 1, where we just took really long breaks because neither of us had capacity, did we?
Yeah, because it took time. But the thing is as well, this links quite nicely onto letting people know that that's what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
You go on the podcast example, I'm really sorry, Amelia, I'm really overwhelmed with work. I don't have the time. If I put the time into this, I'm gonna burn out. And if you just explain that to people, most of them get it. If they're for you, they get it.
Yeah,
if they don't get it, well, then perhaps it's time to reevaluate their place in your life. But actually being honest sometimes, when we think we're taking on too much, and actually asking for help is a huge one with busyness. Is there someone you can delegate that to?
Yeah.
Do you have to do it? Are you a little bit prideful with your busyness? Are you like, look how much I can do?
Yeah.
Look how great I am. Are you a little bit of a martyr as well, going, oh my goodness, I'm so busy, I'm juggling this and this and this and this. In reality, could you ask your partner to do that? Could you ask your friend to do that? Do you even need to do it?
Such a good question. Such a good question. It comes down to capacity, doesn't it? And actually going, am I physically, mentally able to do this thing? It links back to people pleasing so much, doesn't it? But it's okay. You do not have to be busy all the time. And as much as there are many responsibilities in life, and many of which we can't let them drop, particularly, you know, I feel for parents who have
hard.
got a lot to juggle, as well as looking after growing human beings is a lot.
Yes.
But really encourage you to look after yourself, take stock of your capacity, and, you know, assess actually how essential is this thing? Am I able to take a little bit of a break? And if not, where can I draw some boundaries?
Love that. I love that. We're going to leave it there for today. We are aware there's a lot more in this topic. We may come back to it another time.
Indeed.
But thank you so much for listening to Coffee Catchup Espresso. And we hope you will tune in next week.
Bye-bye.